Before the story begins, if you love true historical stories that shock, educate, and reveal what history books often hide, make sure to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories like this. The day America almost lost the Cold War, and how one man saved the world. It was a night when the world unknowingly stood just minutes away from nuclear annihilation. No warning sirens rang in American cities. No emergency broadcasts interrupted television programs. No leaders addressed the nation. And yet, on that night, the Cold War almost ended, not with diplomacy, not with peace, but with fire, radiation, and the irreversible collapse of civilization. History would later reveal a chilling truth. If not for the courage and judgment of one single man, the United States and much of the world might not exist today. A world on the edge. The year was 1983. The Cold War had reached one of its most dangerous peaks since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union were razor-thin, brittle, and deeply poisoned by decades of mistrust. President Ronald Reagan had recently called the Soviet Union an evil empire. The United States was deploying new nuclear missiles in Europe. NATO was conducting large-scale military exercises that the Soviets secretly feared were a cover for a real attack. On the other side, the Soviet leadership, aging, paranoid, and deeply scarred by World War II, was convinced that the United States might strike first. Both superpowers had enough nuclear weapons to destroy the world many times over, and both were watching the skies. The system that was never supposed to fail. Deep inside the Soviet Union, hidden from the world, stood a top-secret early warning facility known as Serpukhov-15. Its purpose was terrifyingly simple: detect incoming American nuclear missiles. If missiles were detected, the system would alert Soviet command. The command would alert the Kremlin, and within minutes, retaliation would begin. There would be no second chance, no time for debate, no room for error. This system relied on satellites orbiting Earth, scanning for the heat signatures of missile launches from the United States. The Soviet Union trusted this system completely. That trust would nearly end the world. The man on duty. On the night of September 26, 1983, the man in charge of monitoring the system was Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov. Petrov was not a politician. He was not a general with power or influence. He was an engineer, a quiet, analytical man trained to understand systems, logic, and human error. Ironically, that night, he was not even supposed to be on duty. He was filling in for another officer. No one could have known that this accident of scheduling would become one of the most important moments in human history. 00:15 Moscow time. Shortly after midnight, the silence inside Serpukhov-15 was shattered. An alarm screamed. A massive red warning flashed across the screens. Launch detected. According to the system, a massive nuclear missile had just been launched from the United States. One missile. Petrov froze. Protocol demanded immediate reporting. The system's confidence level, 100%. If Petrov reported this stat to Soviet High Command, the countdown to retaliation would begin. The United States would be targeted. Nuclear missiles would launch from Soviet soil, and within an hour, millions, possibly hundreds of millions, would be dead. But something felt wrong. 5 missiles. Before Petrov could even process the first alert, the system sounded again, and again, and again. Now it wasn't 1 missile, it was 5. The computer insisted America had launched a nuclear strike. The room erupted in panic. Officers shouted. Sweat poured down faces. telephones waited for the call that would change history forever. Every rule said the same thing: report the attack immediately. The flaw no one considered. But Petrov hesitated. Why? Because he thought like an engineer, not a soldier. He knew something crucial, and a real American nuclear first strike would not involve 5 missiles. It would involve hundreds. The U.S. strategy was overwhelming force, not a small symbolic attack. 5 missiles made no sense. Petrov also knew the system was new, recently installed and untested under real-world conditions. And then there was another detail. The ground-based radar systems designed to confirm satellite data showed nothing. No missiles, no confirmation, only silence. 30 seconds that lasted forever. Petrov had seconds to decide. If he reported the alert as real and it turned out to be false, millions would die because of his call. If he dismissed the alert and it turned out to be real, the Soviet Union would be hit without warning and he would be blamed for the destruction of his country. There was no manual for this moment, no superior to consult. Only one man, one judgment, and the weight of the world. Petrov made a choice that went against everything he was trained to do. He picked up the phone, and he said the words that may have saved civilization. This is a false alarm. Waiting for the end. After reporting the alert as an error, Petrov waited. If he was wrong, American missiles would strike Soviet territory within minutes. He sat in silence, watching the clock. No explosions came. No radar confirmations appeared. Minute after minute passed. Finally, it became undeniable. There was no attack. The system had been wrong. The terrifying truth. Later investigations revealed what caused the false alarm. The Soviet satellites had mistaken sunlight reflecting off clouds over North Dakota for missile launches. A perfect alignment of clouds, sunlight, and satellite positioning had tricked one of the most advanced defense systems on Earth. The system worked exactly as designed, but reality did not. Punished, not praised. You might expect Stanislav Petrov to have been hailed as a hero. He wasn't. Instead, he was reprimanded for failing to properly log the incident. The Soviet Union could not admit the system's flaw without revealing weaknesses. Petrov's actions embarrassed powerful people, so his story was buried. He quietly retired. He suffered from stress, isolation, and financial hardship. For years, the man who may have saved the world lived in near obscurity. The world finally finds out. It wasn't until the 1990s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, that Petrov's story became public. Western historians were stunned. Military experts called it one of the most dangerous moments in human history, more dangerous, some argued, than the Cuban Missile Crisis. The world realized something deeply unsettling. Human civilization survived not because systems worked, but because one man dared to question them. Petrov eventually received international recognition, including the World Citizen Award. But by then, the Cold War was over, and the damage to his life had already been done. Why this moment matters today. This story is not just history, it is a warning. Even today, nuclear weapons remain on high alert. Early warning systems still rely on technology, and human judgment is still the final line between peace and destruction. The day America almost lost the Cold War was not a battlefield clash, not a presidential decision, not a diplomatic breakthrough. It was a quiet night, in a silent room, with a man who chose reason over protocol. One man, one choice, one world saved. History often teaches us about presidents, generals, and wars, but sometimes the fate of the world rests in the hands of someone whose name almost disappeared forever. Stanislav Petrov never fired a weapon, never gave a speech, never led an army, yet his decision may be the reason you are alive today. If this story shocked you, taught you something new, or made you see history differently, please like this video, comment your thoughts below, share it so others can learn this forgotten truth, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful real stories from history. Because some stories are not just about the past, they are about how close we came to losing everything.